Hey, everyone in the United States, Canada, and 46 countries around the world. We have broken through 173,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. And it's onward to the Summer Solstice champagne celebration of at least 175,000 Earthfiles subscribers, maybe even more in our June 23rd broadcast. Put on something fun and fancy. Click the record button on your cell phone. Raise your glass for a worldwide cheer announcing your town and country. And then ask me a question. Send your recorded video, toast, cheer, and question to questions@earthfiles.com. Ian will receive and organize your videos to send to Brad and to me to edit into a series that we can play on our Wednesday, June 23rd Earthfiles celebration broadcast. And I'll be ready to answer as many of your questions as I can. And you know, so many mysteries are beginning to emerge even beyond all the questions about UFOs. This morning, I received it was a first email about a first crop formation of 2021. And here is what I opened up. This is a yellow flowering oilseed rape with the Stanton St. Bernard white horse on the distant hill in the background. The UK white horses have been backdrops to dozens of UK crop circles since the early 1990s. Oilseed is the toughest crop in the world to walk through when it's flowering. You can't get more than 2 feet without becoming entangled in the stems, which hold onto you, while the bright yellow pollen covers your clothes, your skin, and your hair. And that is why through the past 30 years since 1992, when I first began going to England to experience the magic mystery of the beautiful formations, that I was especially interested in what patterns would come down in the springtime yellow rapeseed fields, because that's nearly impossible to hoax. Any boards, string, feet are going to leave signs everywhere. Well, this pure yellow is closer to what it's really like on a sunny spring day to walk through oilseed rape. And geneticist Horace Drew in Sydney, Australia, who has studied UK crop formations for several years, wrote at the cropcircleconnector.com website about this first of the 2021 crop circle season, quote, "The flattened plants do not show any obvious signs of mechanical crushing. Their yellow flowers remain intact, so there is no evidence at present to suggest that it might have been man-made," close quote. Some commenters at the Crop Circle Connector have compared this new rapeseed formation to a pinwheel clock, perhaps counting down to some date in the future, maybe like the 180-day countdown in the United States, where we're waiting for UFO revelations by the Department of Defense and national intelligence. And I've been thinking about this 180-day countdown a lot. And as we've discussed in the past, this was in the COVID funding bill signed at the end of December, and that it requests the Secretary of Defense, 4-star U.S. Army General Lloyd Austin, who was newly appointed by President Joe Biden, to collaborate with the current Director of National Intelligence, Avril Danica Haynes, also appointed by President Joe Biden on January 21st, 2021. They are ordered by the COVID funding bill in the red underlined sentences to provide information about advanced aerial threats to congressional representatives and the American people about, quote, threats posed by the unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, to national security, and an assessment of whether this unidentified aerial phenomena activity may be attributed to one or more foreign adversaries, close quote. And I wonder, it could be off-world or on Earth. Then, on May 3rd, came this formal memorandum from the Department of Defense Inspector General opening up an investigation allegedly about complaints of stonewalling, not providing information requested by congressional investigators to these questions about UAPs from the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence. Well, when it comes to trying to understand what the United States military and intelligence agencies actually know about UFOs and UAPs, and what advanced technologies are being back-engineered from materials collected from a variety of UFO crashes and probably planned landings, I contacted plasma physicist Dr. John E. Brandenburg, Ph.D., the first and only scientist to straightforwardly discuss evidence of not only another intelligence on Mars millions of years ago, but to write this nonfiction book released in 2015 entitled Death on Mars, The Discovery of a Planetary Nuclear Massacre, always available at Amazon.com. Dr. Brandenburg hypothesizes that a warring alien species used 2 hydrogen bombs to explode in the atmosphere above the northern Martian hemisphere region known as Cydonia, famous for the face on Mars that you can see in this image. John thinks the Star Wars-like drama might have happened 200 million years ago in our solar system, based on calculations of the half-lives of radioactive plutonium-244, xenon-129, and other radioactive substances. And this is the famous D&M huge pyramid that is in that Cydonia complex. Plasma physicist John Brandenburg, Ph.D., now works as senior scientist and chief of astronautics and theoretical plasma research at Kepler Aerospace Limited in Midland, Texas. Kepler is developing several proprietary propulsion, energy, and microwave burst technologies for military and defense industries. 70-year-old John Brandenburg received his Ph.D. in theoretical plasma physics at the University of California, Davis Extension Campus at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in Livermore, California in 1981. His Ph.D. thesis then was about magnetic confinement of plasmas for controlled nuclear fusion. Then, between 2003 and 2018, Dr. Brandenburg also produced a 3-book novel in fiction based on fact from his years working inside government projects. The fascinating 3-book novel is entitled Morning Star Pass, The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up. Also always available in Kindle edition at Amazon.com. Well, last weekend, on May 8th, I called John to ask for his insights about why the Department of Defense Inspector General on May 3rd, 2021, had inserted itself into the 180-day countdown for more UAP, UFO information from the SecDef and DNI. Usually, we think of the Inspector General as an overseer to prevent and detect fraud and abuse in government programs and operations. Here is what Dr. Brandenburg told me.
Politico recently indicated that the congressional investigators were being kind of stonewalled by various members of the defense and intelligence community concerning UAPs. So the Inspector General apparently stepped in because of a congressional order and technically have to cooperate because the Congress controls all their money. So I think the Inspector General's investigation has to do with the fact that they are not getting cooperation. Congressional investigators are not getting cooperation.
It's what Colonel Corso said in his book, The Day After Roswell, that the internecine warfare among the intelligence agencies and military branches in the United States was their biggest problem.
Oh, I read his book, and this was very consistent with what my understanding was from working in Washington, D.C. in space intel. Former director of the Israeli Ministry of Defense, Haim Eshed, he was there for 30 years. This man has solid credentials. He was the father of the Israeli spy satellite program. And he says the U.S. government has entered into agreements. The government knows that aliens exist. Haim Eshed says we have secret agreements with them.
Right. Haim Eshed also said in response to a reporter's question about the relationship of the extraterrestrials to the geopolitical situation, why are humans not told the truth that extraterrestrials are here? Why is there a policy of denial and silence? Haim Eshed said, it isn't human decision. It is an order by the extraterrestrial biological entities to not tell humans. How do you read that?
That's quite consistent with the scenario I put in the novel because it suited both sides. The secret government equal to the executive. It suited both purposes and the purposes of the one alien group they were dealing with, the Greys. They kept everything quiet.
And can you flesh that out into what actually the Greys are?
Animal mutilation, which of course you're very familiar with, and the abduction phenomenon.
Right.
Also the fact that the military has clashed repeatedly with the Greys. I mean, the Greys are just one group out there. The Greys have a long-standing interest. They just want Earth.
That the Greys want this planet.
Yeah, that's why they're making hybrids. The hybrids can live on Earth. So it's a very complex kind of relationship, and it hasn't gone very well. This was actually first discussed by John Lear, who supposedly had close contacts with intel agencies. He said that the arrangement with one group of aliens had gone very badly. All a scientist can do is do things like work on unified field theory to see if we can do gravity/inertia modification to make flying ships that can not only defy gravity, but defy laws of inertia, fly around corners. And we are doing that. I'm just one of many working on that. And we're basically extending the laws of physics that we already know, and we're finding out that, yes, you can have gravity/inertia modification.
Yes, in the part 2 with Stephen Greenstreet in the basement office, Lou Elizondo is asked by Stephen, how far ahead are the UAP, UFO intelligences? And Lou Elizondo says maybe 100 years or less.
I would say less.
That the ETs we're dealing with are not more than 100 years ahead of us.
No, they are not.
Okay. Now, Stephen Greenstreet says this to Louis Elizondo. If the world is really on the cusp of learning about the existence of something extraordinary, even if it has always been here, what would be your suggestion to those watching this interview how to mentally prepare for that? Elizondo says, well, first of all, I'm not sure we will ever be prepared. That doesn't mean we should not know the truth. We should. But how does one prepare for a global pandemic? How does one prepare for the idea that weapons of mass destruction are being proliferated? How does one prepare for climate change? Why is Lou Elizondo talking about existential wipeout subjects?
If you want to understand what the government is having to deal with, you should watch a bunch of Hollywood movies like Independence Day or The World's Beginning in the 50s. Just watch them. That's how you prepare for disclosure. The major message is that we face a threat from outer space.
What do you think the threat is from outer space?
People who would like to take this planet, it's my understanding, colonize with hybrids.
The grays, the blondes, or the reptilians?
It's possible that two races, two or more at the same time, could possibly want this place. I think that it's been 70 years since Roswell. The U.S. government, for all of its mistakes, clumsiness, has actually done a pretty good job. We've had Ronald Reagan warning us repeatedly of the possibility of an outer space invasion. The fact that there still is a UFO cover-up is a success because it means that aliens out there who might bear us ill will has not attempted any major military move. In the scenario that was described to me, the U.S. government is the pilot and co-pilot of a jet airliner full of passengers. And if they're flying along and one of their engines goes out, they don't tell the passengers that that's what's happened. That's how the U.S. government views the situation.
You're making a metaphor saying that there is internal tension because the government is like the pilot of an airliner in which it's flying at 35,000 feet and an engine goes out.
Yes.
If that is the case, I want to quote to you from the part 2 with Louis Elizondo and his discussion with Stephen Greenstreet on the basement office. This is Louis Elizondo. Quote, "Pay attention for the next 30 days. I think the conversation is going to get real interesting. This is a process, not an event, and we are taking this very seriously." And Stephen Greenstreet asked Louis Elizondo, quote, "Well, do you mean the conversation is going to change?" Elizondo, "I think it's going to be bolstered. I think more people that have not been a part of this topic, unidentified aerial phenomena, will probably begin to ask questions," close quote. John, what do you think he's referring to? What is going to happen?
I think there's a group of people who think that the best interests of the United States and humanity are for disclosure at this point. At least basic disclosure that we're not alone in the universe. There are other intelligent species out there, and some of them are buzzing the Earth. Then there's some other people who don't want this stuff disclosed till after doomsday.
Why?
Well, they don't want the fact that the U.S. government may have looked the other way during abductions and animal mutilations and other things. They don't want to expose the government to that kind of scrutiny.
But the animal mutilations and the human abductions are ongoing today as we speak in May of 2021, somewhere on this planet. And this is the whole truth that the whole planet needs if humanity is going to keep moving forward in any kind of healthy way, right?
Oh, I know. But I think a group of people in the community who's decided, yes, the time has come. But they're at loggerheads with the other group that doesn't want disclosure to happen now or any time in the near future.
What has convinced the intelligent group for letting out the truth? What has convinced them that telling the truth is the best path?
Well, it's a dangerous situation to have the government, which is a democracy, have a major foreign relations problem not disclosed to the American public.
Right.
During the Eisenhower administration, when he took over the presidency from Truman, he inherited this UFO cover-up, and he demanded reports from the group, the Majestic 12, that were supposedly dealing with this, and they wouldn't tell him what they were doing. So they were going rogue. And you always have a problem where if you have a secret group negotiating with a powerful foreign entity, they may switch loyalties on you. And if there's enough secrecy, you may not be able to figure that out. So it's a very dangerous situation. Much better to have everybody start laying their cards on the table.
Everybody needs to lay everything out on the table. I couldn't agree more. And I really hope that all of you here tonight understand how important it is that a plasma physicist with a background like John Brandenburg is speaking straight in a recorded message or an interview with me to share with the public, because he feels very concerned that we're on a path in which the truth keeps being shoved off and other things keep trying to replace it, pushing back, being honest to this world human family about the fact that we're not alone in this universe and never have been. And I just feel in my own soul, mind, and heart that this is one of the most important discussions that I could try to bring you, is from somebody who has had a career in advanced physics, who is now working at Kepler Aerospace, and he doesn't beat around the bush. There are other intelligences. It's a complicated situation, that the grays may not be as innocent as sometimes as they are described. Others may have ulterior motives, and that the complexity of the 16-layered chess game really is a fact to physicists like Dr. Brandenburg, who have not only studied a planet like Mars and come to the conclusion that there was some huge attack there in the distant past, that we're in a universe in which what we know on Earth, and that is tension and wars and fighting, it may not be foreign to the rest of the universe, and that it really would help all of us humans, the babies that we are, if we understood all of the whole truth. It might change some people's whole lives to something maybe even more positive if we understood that there is a lot at stake in the future of this planet surviving, our own survival, and what is out in a universe in which the yin and yang symbol, the black and the white, seem to be juxtaposed with each other from one end of the universe to the other. And if we truly understood that truth, if we really understood bigger issues having to do with why there is consciousness and organic life in this particular universe, that might be one of the keys. There might be a universe next door that is all non-organic, and there may be an infinite variety going on in the cosmos with a capital C. But right now, as we are in 2021, I think it's becoming more and more clear to everyone that UFO, UAP, it's not fireflies. It's not balloons. It is physics at an advanced level that is being operated by someone other than Homo sapiens sapien. And I don't think it should be so hidden. And my fervent hope is that as we go forward and we get into June, July, August, maybe, finally, this will be the year that a fundamental truth that we're not alone in this universe is finally opened. And then think about all of the subjects that we can talk about on the Earthfiles YouTube channel. It just keeps going exponentially and exponentially. So with that, Ian, I am interested to throw this to you, and for you to remind everybody again about what we are going to be planning for the solstice celebration.
Hi, Linda. Well, we'll go straight into the reiteration, which I was planning to announce anyway. So I'd just like to say, please, to all of our audience, please, all the viewers around the world, that is, to please put on your best costumes, hit the record button on your devices, and send us a video question for Linda. And please remember, we'd like to know who you are and where you are, please, and also what you're drinking to celebrate with.
Yeah.
And don't forget that all-important question for Linda.
Yes, and I will really work hard at trying to get through as many as possible. And if you want to wear, like something that is just black and rhinestones, do that. But let's have fun with it. Let's, like we were going to a wonderful, fun champagne party together. And we're on this big world, but we're going to do it digitally. So let's think in terms of really going for a party. And that's what, dress up, record yourself, record your question to me, and we'll have fun. Let's really have fun. All right.
Right, it'll be a truly worldwide gathering of Earthfiles viewers.
And so, Ian, what have you got up at the top of the list of questions tonight?
Just before we do, I'll do that famous list of super chats. So thank you again to our audience, again, all around the world, with their generous donations for the super chats. Here we go. We've got Moonbird, Dave Goodrich,
Love
Ethan
you.
Burnt, Jeffrey Rizzo, Alexander Nagel, Gina McHugh, Deborah McGavin, Solly Cat, Mary Kelly, Shana Raisme, Anthony Nicoletta, Sexy Sadie, apparently some of you like the way I say that, Teresa Bass, and Bob Dawson. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, everybody. Sexy Sadie to Moonbird and beyond. I just love all of you. Someday I hope, wouldn't it be fantastic if we can travel again and we could possibly have a gathering in England around crop formations and get to hug each other. Hugs have a whole new meaning for me. It's like we are missing all of that energy and all of that information that we get in hugs that have been gone out of everybody's life now for over a year. It's so odd that I really think about that. Can you imagine how fun that would be for a whole bunch of us to be in the Vale of Pewsey in England, being able to do night watches and all of the fun things as an Earthfiles group in which we would actually be able to interact in the matter world again? Well, let's hold that as maybe it's out there if we just hold it as a possibility. And we have to get past the India variant and all these other variants of the horrible COVID. But it feels, doesn't it feel like to you all, it's something, it's like it's a little bit more of a decrescendo. And if we just keep it up and we just stay careful, maybe in a few months, it will be so much better again. Well, I'll hold that in my mind, you hold that in yours. And Ian, let's go into questions.
Okay, the first question then is related to the crop circle, and that crop circle you showed us in oilseed rape in England. I just want to remind you and everybody that this is a very fragile crop as well. It would be very difficult to make such a good formation like this as a man-made formation in such brittle crop.
Yeah,
that's a comment.
Ian, I have myself been in many oilseed rape formations where you're trying to just move through the plants and you can't, and you realize that even if you're trying to be delicate, that you're leaving because the pollen comes off. And anybody who has been in rape knows that you can tell if plants have been touched or there have been boards or shoes. It is so difficult. And I'll tell you another thing that hit me today when I saw this photo for the first time. My first reaction was that it was what's called a 7-fold geometry, which is rare. And it had to do with the way those triangular points, at first, in a fast glance, I thought, wow, this is a 7-point geometry. Then you count each of the triangles of the different sizes, and it is 4, 8, 16. But on appearance, it was like a 7-fold. And I think there must be something about the numbers in this one that if we understood what was behind the layout of this very, very unique pattern, that it would have something maybe to do with a signal, a message, because of the mathematics. And anybody who is listening now, who is really good with math, look at this Stanton St. Bernard pattern that is in the yellow rapeseed and send to me at Earthfiles at earthfiles.com any observations or insights that you have about why perhaps this might be the first formation of 2021 in what feels like a precarious year, and what the geometric relationship of all of those triangular pieces to the math that is there might be. I would love to hear from some of you. Yeah, so Ian.
Well, but yeah, going on from that, Linda, the question about the crop circles or the crop formations are, do you think that this is connected with ETs, or is it another intelligence? And what do you think they are trying to tell us? Which species is doing this?
My first trip to England was in 1992. And I believe it was that year, for the very first time before I went to England, that I was at a conference, and it was somebody I did not know, but they had been studying and familiar with some of the, we'll call it the crop formations in Warminster and areas that were in the 70s. A lot of people don't realize there were crop formations earlier in the 70s. And then there were some in the 80s, and the ones that we really, where everything kicked off for the whole world was around 90 to 92. And that person at the conference said that there were face-to-face encounters in the fields in some place with tall blondes. And later on, there would be another story or two about people seeing tall blondes in a crop formation. And that kind of set a question mark. Well, are the crop formations just from one type of non-human? Then it would have been probably around 2000 something, because I went from 1992 up through 2000, I think 7, almost every year. And I think it was after we got into the 21st century. There, I interviewed this person. They were driving in an area that is known as the East Field. It's very famous in the Vale of Pusey for being one of the fields that may have had the most formations of a field of any place. And I have a sketch of what this person described. Their car comes around a bend. It's late at night, like 2 o'clock in the morning. And the lights in the car shine suddenly, and this is what I remember. The man said, like, I don't even know where it came from, but I'm looking at a plaid dress. That was the first thing that hit him, a plaid dress. And he stopped the car and realized that to him, it looks like something like a 10 or 12-year-old girl with brown hair wearing plaid. Now, if you jump from crop formations and go to animal mutilations, I think it's 2 or 3 times that I have had people who have been ranchers, or the Cimarron case where the mother was with her son, 6-year-old son, in the car, and they see a silver disc, and they hear a cow screaming, and there appear to be some beings or something down where this cow is screaming, and they see the silver craft. And the mother, under a hypnosis session with Dr. Leo Sprinkle, who was then director of counseling and testing at the University of Wyoming, she thought that whoever had the cow down in the pasture was wearing plaid shirts. And this whole strange issue of plaids comes up throughout the UFO ET syndrome. And I think that the plaids have been associated with tall beings. Now, whether there would be Nordic or white hair or something red or something else, I don't think that's clear. But the plaids are associated with humanoids, not grays, and not reptilians. That may seem quirky and odd, that something like plaid, but think about it. It's a pattern of straight lines intersecting at 90-degree angles. And that there may be something that we see and think of it as plaid, and it may actually have a completely different function. This is where we need to have a huge round table of Homo sapiens sapien, myself included, and be able to communicate with the reptilians, the grays, the blondes, the tall red hairs, all of it, so that we all were getting the same information at the same time, and we felt like we had some kind of a reality check, versus the way it appears to be filtered, controlled, smashed, cut up through the various geopolitical and government interests now. We don't really fully understand much of anything in its wholeness. So these are the facets that you run into when you start getting into crop formations, animal mutilations. There will be variations on the 3 main subjects that most people have heard about: reptilians, blondes, and grays. But it's not that simple at all. And the crop formations are, without doubt, in my entire life, I think that the most exhilarating and beautiful days and nights that I have ever spent anywhere on the planet would have been in the Vale of Pusey on the various trips, in mystery, and feeling that on the other side of the crop formations themselves was profound intelligence. And some of you may recall a couple of years ago, I was sharing, it was my first crop formation in 1992 at Milk Hill. And a group of us had gone up on top of Milk Hill, where the White Horse is. And we were looking down, and I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, it was a 410 or 430 foot long, about 140 feet longer than a football field. It was a big formation. And it had a pattern of circles and paths that connected the circles. And the group of us above, there was a sense of exhilaration, because for most of us, it was the first time we were there in England to get into anything. And now we came up above, and it was thrilling to see. And we start down inside the tram lines, because you don't want to tramp down any crop. And I think we actually started running. I think people were divided out in different tram lines. And I know that I wanted to go as far down. For some reason, I wanted to go far. And most everybody stopped back. And I had a 35 millimeter Nikon camera that was hanging around my neck, and I took it everywhere. Quite different from flat cell phones, the big lens, but I loved that camera. And where I stopped is where I approached to go into what looked like an opening in the side of the circle. And when I got to this one place that I thought I was going to step into the crop formation, that's where I had the resistance of what felt like warm jello. That's exactly what it felt like. I have been told later that it may have been an electrostatic field, but it basically was, no, you're not coming in there, and I would not violate it. And in staying outside the crop formation for a while, taking photos, I was being able to move my zoom down onto the crop, and I could see that there were layers. And when the warm jello finally let go, and then it was like almost like something said, okay, now you can come in. And I remember stepping in almost on my toes. I probably stayed on my toes. I didn't want to crush down these plants. I just wanted to experience what it was like inside. And I got down and I lifted up like about an inch. And when I did that, this layer was a series of 90-degree angles. And I was shocked that underneath a swirl on the top that I lifted up a little bit, I'm looking at 90-degree perfect angles. And then I lifted up about an inch of that layer, and then there was another layer of 90-degree angles, as if you had a clock, and these went a little bit different angle than this layer, all the way down, 7 layers. I went 7 layers down to where the dirt was. And each layer, the crop was in different 90-degree angles. At that point, it was like going through Alice in Wonderland's mirror. I remember getting up astounded by the complexity and perfection of what is in this huge crop formation, and deciding that I would walk all the way down to the final end of the whole pattern. And when I got to, and the crop was waist level approximately, the heads of the wheat, and it was just a sea of the crop and tram lines in that crop. And I stood there looking and trying to absorb what in the world could do such complexity in layers. And that is when, standing there, what came into my mind was the head and eyes of a Bengal tiger. And it was almost like awareness, consciousness, on guard, not an attack, but not everything is safe. And then a thought voice, just as clear as could be, but it was a thought voice. Life on this planet is not guaranteed. And that was a turning point for me on that first trip and that first crop formation for the rest of my life. I have thought of that moment hundreds of times. The Bengal tiger, life on this planet is not guaranteed. But on the other side of what you would think would seem like a threatening image, I didn't feel threatened at all by the Bengal tiger. I felt in it was profound intelligence. Like whatever was communicating with this baby human in this crop formation for the first time, that that the Bengal tiger just represented something that could play 16-layer chess in all of the galaxies of this cosmos at the same time. That there was a profound, beyond brilliance. And it set a tone from then to now that the crop formations, the ones that have not been the result of people wanting to play jokes and all of that, the ones like that day at Milk Hill. There's mathematical language in them. One man who worked for the CIA suggested to me they could be markers in time for time travelers. That the level of complexity and challenge to understand in the crop formations is like the first beginnings of what it might be like for us to finally meet and have a handshake with an intelligence that is vast and deep. And it doesn't mean that a vast and deep intelligence wants to hurt us. In fact, it could be exactly the opposite, that the vast and deep intelligence wants to see us evolve, wants to see us survive and thrive, because it may be that humans do contribute something in this universe that maybe no other organic life form does quite the same way. But that there is always the sense that if we don't grow up, if we don't learn how to tell the truth about what is really on the planet, in the universe, in this solar system, that being kept ignorant on purpose could be our biggest threat. So, questions. I'll try to keep answering. We're learning together. It is a complex game. Go ahead, Ian.
Okay, here's another question. Linda, do you believe in starseeds? That is, that some were sent from other planets in past lives to help out with Earth?
I think it makes sense in the context of what I was just saying. And I don't have any inside information from anybody about a definition of a star seed beyond that the word itself, a seed from another star, it falls into the category of people who are investigating hybrids. And if there are hybrids, that they would be manipulated DNA by something that knows how to do it and monitor and cultivate and evolve, and that we are one of the products of star seed hybridization on planet Earth. Some people reject the word starseed because they say it's too poetic, that we are not dealing with a subject that is poetry, we are dealing with a threat to our existence. Maybe. I think there have always been existential threats from a lot of directions. Doesn't all of this, starseeds, hybridization, animal mutilations, human abductions, the mystery of dark juxtaposed to white light, mass as Bohm defined it, all mass is frozen light. It is as if we are in a universe, maybe one of an infinite number, that was made very specifically for something related to organic life. And if this is the only universe that was made specifically to train the soul quantum energy. I think souls are like pieces of quantum energy. To train them ultimately to differentiate between the white and the black, between the light and the dark, between love and hate, between life and death. If that's what this universe really is about, a training, a tremendous training university for souls, then all of the bizarreness, the strangeness, the Star Wars, all of it would be designed to try to see, could organic life go through cycles of death and birth and come out at the end of 1,000,000 cycles, forevermore choosing light and life and love. Something about that has always rung true to me, that we're not in a natural universe, that we're in some kind of a training ground. And Starseeds wouldn't be cartoonish. Starseeds would be some of the working fabric of how to teach organic life by being seeded on planets to move the life that is there on further. So that's how I look at hybrids and starseeds, not as something that's threatening, but something that seems to be a natural partner in a universe that feels to me like it is a training ground, because otherwise you reach a point philosophically and spiritually where you don't understand why light does not always trump darkness. Okay, Ian?
Yes, just one. Here's a good question. Linda, do you think we'll see human and extraterrestrial marriages in our lifetime?
That is an excellent question, and I'm very visual, and I get images out here all the time. And what just went through my mind's eye was tall blondes, tall red hairs, tall black hairs, reptilians, tall, short, some like lizards, some like standing up alligators, grays, a menagerie, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot, praying mantises. It just all went. And then I'm thinking, one of the themes, if you say there was a theme, one of the themes that was already being described to me by Jacques Vallée and by Leah Sprinkle and other people you wouldn't know, but were in Colorado in that area when I started the film on animal mutilations. There was a theme that, and probably the Billy Meyer case was one of them, one of the pieces that contributed to this theme. And this is the way it went back then, 79 to 80. The tall blondes are the true progenitors of Homo sapien, and that they experiment, they're like scientists, that they have interacted with evolutionary paths for millions of years in this solar system and on Earth. And that those tall blondes look at us as that question, like we are the star seeds that they created, and that they have a concern for us, but they aren't the only game in town. And that when Leo Sprinkle and others, when we would talk about this, it would be always confusion about what did the gray ones really want, and were they all artificial intelligence? Were any of the grays actually organic, and were the tall blondes our uncles, our grandparents, and so forth, leaving the reptilians, standing up lizards, standing up alligators, as a group that was always discussed as the Bible, Genesis, may be setting the stage for what has been the true history of this planet, that the reptilians were already on Earth before the tall blondes and the grays ever heard about it or came here. And that the three groups had their own territorial objectives, their own goals, but that the reptilians always considered Earth theirs, and that would explain why Adam and Eve in Genesis, it talks about how the viper, the snake, was their teacher, and was also the one who tempted Eve, one of the new humans. And that all along, the tall blondes have not always been of one political persuasion, all the same, but they too are complex, in that even the tall blondes that we assume some connection with a humanoid shape, they may have political divisions. And that whoever our progenitor is for the last, most recent DNA manipulation, Homo erectus being number 1, Homo sapien sapien being whatever number it is now, that what we are, our DNA, our RNA, it may have a genetic link to these tall blondes, not the others. But even if that hypothesis were true, why have we ended up on a planet that in the 20th century, when the first atomic bombs by humans were exploded in Japan, why are the dominant intelligence in all the abduction cases in the United States grays? The tall blondes were known more to Europe. The reptilians are associated with Mesopotamia. Why wouldn't tall humanoids, if that's the true nature of the progenitors, why wouldn't they be the ones that would dominate in the abductions, the experiences around the world? And what I've just laid out shows you how complicated all of this is, because I've been struggling to understand all of the pieces and how they fit together and what the real truth is for 42 years now, since 1979 and animal mutilations. So I think it all boils down to Earth has been many gardens of Edens. There have been many experimenters. Some of the experimenters fight with each other. Some probably have treaties. And that if you said, what is exciting about the rest of this century? For me, it would be, oh, Lord, take a pill, to live for 500, 1,000 years and start trying to learn firsthand what is going on in all these planetary systems, in these suns, and what is the real truth about why are we in a universe in which the yin and yang symbol is a representative metaphor of everything that seems to go on in this universe, where there is a juxtaposition of light and dark, leaving humble Homo sapiens sapien. Why? So I'm right at the bottom of the hour, or half hour. Ian, I'll leave it up to you. Do you have one more question that I can try to answer in a minute or so?
Well, these questions are going to be pretty big. I think there's, I just want to refer you briefly. Someone's referring back to Zecharia Sitchin's Earth Chronicles series. What are your thoughts on that, and how does that tie in?
Okay, I'm gonna go to my TV screen. What burst in, because this is the truth. You all know that I was contracted in 1983 by Home Box Office to do a documentary that I have talked to called UFOs, the ET Factor. And I ended up in that year, 83 to 84, working in New York for UNICEF on child survival issues while I was trying to keep things going on the HBO project, and I needed to be in New York. And I heard about Zecharia Sitchin, and I really, really wanted to talk with him. I wanted to ask him questions about the ancient ETs in the solar system and everything that was in his books. And I wanted to talk with him about animal mutilations. And so I got a number, I called him up, a meeting was set. I had an address. I was new to New York. I didn't know where I was going. I just had an address. And where the taxi left me off was in front of the Rockefeller Center in New York City, with the big skating in the winter. And this glorious, huge building. And I have the address, and I go inside, and I say, I'm here to see Zecharia Sitchin. And the guard immediately go to this elevator and go to this floor, and I found myself walking on a marble floor, beautiful walnut doors, high up above New York City in Rockefeller Center. And I came to the door that was the number on the address that Zecharia had given me on the phone. And you had to ring a buzzer, and the door opened. And I am walking into a beautiful office, windows looking out over Manhattan, a secretary sitting behind a glass kiosk, like you would find like in a high-end dentist's office or something. And I introduced myself, and she said, yes, just a moment, and Mr. Sitchin will see you. But he wasn't in this room. And then I realized there's another door. So this is a suite of offices. And I think the woman came and took me to this door. And Zecharia Sitchin met me on the other side of the door with those silver, round, shiny glasses and his crystal blue eyes. And he pointed to a chair for me to sit down, and it was a table like this, and he sat at this end and here, so we're at like a 90-degree corner. And I'm probably no more than about eye to eye. I'm not more than 3 feet eye to eye. And we began talking, and I'm thinking, this is the most extraordinary office for a humble writer of books about Samaria. And this thought formed in my mind, and I ask it, Mr. Sitchin, have you now or ever in the past, at any time, worked for one of the intelligence agencies of the United States? Unwavering. His eyes never looked away from mine. I can remember staring at the silver glinting circle glasses, my question hanging in the air, and something inside of me saying, don't speak. Do not speak. You have batted the ball across the net and now wait for his answer. And I think if somebody had been there with a stopwatch, quite honestly, he and I sat staring at each other, I would say, a good portion of a minute. And then, still unwavering, he never looked away. There was no nervousness, just staring, eye to eye, both of us. He said, "What a strange question, Linda. If I were, you know I couldn't answer you honestly. And if I'm not, how would you ever know what the truth is?" I've never forgotten his answer. I can hear it now. And I've always wondered, did Zecharia Sitchin start into all of the Sumerian work and do everything that he did because he was trying to help the United States government as an employee of an intelligence agency get out into the world public in very safe discussions about ancient pasts that he and the intel agency he might have worked for knew were non-humans settled on this planet, and that we Homo sapiens sapien, we are the babies that no one has ever told us the truth. It's why I do the work I do. It's why I love all of you who come on Wednesdays, and we'll do this again next week. Feel a big, huge hug in this COVID horrible time. I love you.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white Settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.